it's fine.
So I'll send the link when it's live.
Man down, competition nowhere to be found. No son should ever lead to pay for the sins of the father. I would lie if I say I never did this shit for my daughter. I spacewalk on the beat like Jupiter was my mother. Gang, 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 motherfucker, gang till I die. Spread my wings to the sky, man beat already in for fly. You be formal with a suit and tie. I keep it casual, juvenile. For instance, to your man is spin a bar. My flow they come out like Nasanaga. Talking to you like it's just you and I. For all my song they I give my life. You know the truth, so why you telling lies? That for dirty my name better I die. I got demons, I am dating.
Looks like we're live, but I can't find the link. Okay, got it. All right, let me send the link now.
Live.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate people who be shaky. I do yes and I do no's. I don't do maybe. For all my song they I give my life. Pick a side. You with me or
Alrighty, got it. So I'll send the link. You can share. I will share on my wall too. For those that want to follow. That's the Facebook link.
How did you send it?
Yeah, I'll send it on what Facebook chat if you can get it.
J'ai même les cousins à Garoua. Moi et tous mes sœurs sont nés à Douala. On a tous fait l'école à Bamenda. Je know all les motos de Morico. C'est Perica de Boni Nafotico. On est tous les frères, on est tous les bros. On connaît le vrai, on connaît le faux. On est un, rien ne nous sépare. C'est comme si tu me harces de mouve le bras. Je prie Dieu qui me donne un mouna. Je lui donne un nom.
Okay, send to you. There's the link to this chat.
Je goûte à mon terrain à Japoma. Je job toujours
Okay.
à de Ngoma. Le pays de mon père c'est le Mboa. I got demons, I am dirty. I get feelings, I feel love and I feel hatred. Pick a side. In no time we go in life, that's all my life. I hate people who be shaky. I do yes and I do no's, I don't do maybes. Pick a side. You with me or you with them, better decide.
So I tagged them at Tabo. So you when you share your wall, you can tag the other doctors.
Okay.
Yeah. Alrighty, I posted on my own wall. Shared on my timeline.
Um, I think that it's shared.
Yeah, I
So
see. Yeah, I've seen the notification.
okay, so yeah, I think it's fine. All good.
Yeah. All right, man. We can go ahead and start. Welcome. As you know, this episode emerged from a question that was posted by Atobo about the difference between developing, he said websites, but I think we could make it more abstract, like web applications from scratch versus dealing with WordPress. So I think there are many, like you had mentioned, it's not something that one can just write a few words and then capture it all. So it's better we have a conversation. So over to you. You can take it and tell us as much as you can, or we could just make it more interactive.
Yeah. We can make it more interactive.
Okay.
But for a start, I think that it's important for them to first of all know like what exactly WordPress is,
Okay.
and then why people use it, what are the advantages of using it, and why people might not want to use it. That could be a good way to go about it.
Yeah, great. That would be amazing.
Um, so Generally, first of all, WordPress is a piece of software that runs on the web, and this software is generally, or the generic name for these kinds of softwares are known as or we call them CMS, Content Management System. And WordPress was specifically designed as an open source software, means that it's free, and like if I should use the name source, it's like soup, some soup that you're cooking, and everyone can add to the soup just to make sure that the soup is always plenty, and everyone can eat the soup also. So WordPress is that kind of software. It's free. Many people can contribute to it and they can use it. It's a CMS, content management system, that is designed to help people who are not necessarily able to code to also be able to like make websites. So without knowing much about coding, just being able to navigate your way around the WordPress interface, you could set up a website for yourself. And there are actually different levels to how it works. You have like a beginner who really knows nothing about web development can get into WordPress, follow a few instructions and set up a website. And then you might have someone like an amateur who knows some stuffs about tech, who can probably do more. And then you have WordPress developers, who are people who actually develop core things on the WordPress system to deliver other kinds of applications. So the takeaway is that WordPress is a software that helps you to easily create websites,
Yeah.
and without necessarily knowing how to code. Um, I personally, from my experience, I think that the main reason why people use WordPress is because of the cost, like the cost of development. You know, starting with WordPress is very easy. You could go to WordPress.com as a complete beginner, because maybe a developer could go to WordPress.org, and that's always still a question amongst developers. What's the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org?
Yeah.
But for now, let's just call it WordPress, because going into that might create some confusion. But if you go to
Yeah.
WordPress.com as a beginner, you could just spin up a website, and after some time, you could get a custom domain name, you could get the theme change, and stuff like that. So I think one of the most important reasons why people go for WordPress is because of the cost. The cost of WordPress is kind of minimal, because first of all, WordPress developers are widely available, and it's not a very difficult skill to develop.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of WordPress developers. Because of that, the price of getting a WordPress developer is not that high. A lot of people can just learn WordPress on their own and just navigate and do stuff. And then also the timing. And then one very key aspect of people choosing to use WordPress for their website is, usually we have the website and there's some content on the website that you have to change. Um, to build a system that helps you to be able to flexibly change any kind of content on your website, um, it's an expensive project that most people are not willing to pay for just to own a website. So sometimes people are just fine with having a beautiful website, and then being able to use WordPress as the tool behind that WordPress to just manage the content. So WordPress is most inside, because building your own content management system could come up with a couple of problems. So I think that those are some reasons why people use WordPress, and that's WordPress. That's what WordPress is. Now, what is building a website from scratch? What does it mean to build a website from scratch? To build a website from scratch means that you're going to hire a developer, like a computer programmer, or if you're a computer programmer yourself, or not necessarily, maybe there's a distinction between programmers and website developers these days. I don't really know. But you hire, let's say, a web developer, and the web developer, first of all, designs your website using HTML and CSS. That could just be all of it. And you give the developer all of the content, and the developer puts it on the HTML and CSS, and boom, you are not necessarily able to edit that content. Anytime you need to edit the content, you probably need to reach out to the developer. That's a very quick, easy solution. But then there's a more advanced solution where the developer can actually build it and now build a back-end system, which is also a content management system. And now with this content management system, you'll be able to edit all of the content or some of the content on your website.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with this is finding a developer to build this as someone who is not developer or experienced. It can be hard to get a good developer. It could be expensive, and you are not sure that the system that the developer is going to build is going to be reliable. Who is going to continue maintaining the software, because software, some people think that once it's done, perhaps like a piece of electronic that when you buy that's it. No, you have to continue maintaining it because bugs might come up and stuff like that. Problems might come up, and usually it requires a little bit of experience as maybe an administrator or as a business to decide to
Yeah.
have someone develop your own CMS. So you're going to have your own CMS. It's not WordPress. It's not standard. If you hire a new person, the person needs to understand how your own CMS works, and that's not totally a bad thing. It has advantages and disadvantages, which maybe Kobe will get into.
Yeah, I would love to get into that. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say about the development of CMS is that we have other content management systems which are not WordPress. We have some that are actually better than WordPress.
Yeah.
They are not as popular as WordPress, but some of these content management tools also need a developer. So sometimes you're
Yeah.
going to get your own website and get your own content management system. Sometimes the reason why people use non-WordPress is because the kind of content they have, it's too specific that trying to modify WordPress to meet their need becomes the opposite of productivity. So you
Exactly.
just go ahead and design something than trying to over um, customize WordPress, you know. So if you have some very specific needs, or you are this large organization that needs to have their own stuff branded their own way, like you just want to have your internal systems for the sake of it or the prestige of it, going without WordPress is the way.
Mashallah.
um, Generally paying for a developer, of course, having your own system classy, having paying a developer to do something is of course more expensive than just picking up something that has already been developed and is available for almost free, or sometimes even completely free online. So for a start, I think that's enough talking already. Kobe might
Mashallah.
want to.
Mashallah.
Uh,
Thanks for the deliberation. That was deep and extensive. Oh, Atabo is here. Big
mhm.
boss, welcome. Mashallah. I think
Thank you,
Atabo is
thank
here.
you.
Yeah. So Noel has given us like a rundown that captures pretty much everything about the topic. Then he gave me the floor. So you want us to continue, Atabo, or you have a question?
Mm, please, can you go over the rundown? Let me see.
Okay, Noel, you want to do that?
Well, I was just first of all saying what WordPress is, and then what a non-WordPress site is, and what I gave a few advantages and disadvantages. But I want Kobe to elaborate on why you might choose not to use WordPress and why you might choose to use WordPress.
Okay,
But
I'll do
first
the
though,
rundown then. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So Noel enlightened us on the nature of WordPress. It's like a content management system. So the keywords there are like, well, we can take for granted what system means, and focus on content and management. So by content is it could be data and it's necessary transmutation into information, and then by management, I think that four main actions under management: creation, reading, update, and delete. So once you can do that or run those operations on resources, then you are managing them. So WordPress gives you the ability to manage content, that's data, information in those spheres, right? And then the word system now, at least we can just repeat yourselves and says it gives you the ability to do that systematically, in the sense that integrity, like you could have an administrator, you could have different types of permissions so that some people can only see, some people can edit, some can delete and stuff like that. So now WordPress gives you that ability. So it comes almost like an arsenal with all these tools that will help you meet your goals, which could be your web application or your website. So Noel gave us all the details about that, why people want to go that route. And then now he also spoke about building from scratch, which at the end of the day is also a business decision, because WordPress is a tool that you can just use as opposed to building things yourself. And the core of engineering, the main virtue in engineering is reusability and the ability to reuse what is there. But sometimes, like Noel mentioned, trying to reuse something is more about customizing it. And also, trying to customize it may take more time than building it from scratch. You see, it's almost like, imagine you're trying to do a church hall and then they give you a warehouse and maybe you have to change that warehouse to look like a church hall, right? Sometimes it may be more difficult for you to convert that warehouse into a church hall than to just build a new church hall from scratch. So things like that used to be the main things. So I don't know if that's enough for a rundown before I jump into other things.
Nah, please give a rundown.
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and just to add, I did mention that personally, I think that the most principal reason why people go for WordPress is the cost of development, like the price. Why people easily choose WordPress is usually the price, because it's a little bit cheaper, because it's already available, it's free, you can use it, and when you have to pay for stuff, it's not very expensive. But when you
Yeah.
need to go non-WordPress, like develop your own stuff, which has some advantages, you have to pay a developer or develop it yourself, and you need to maintain your own systems. Your own system will be different from what generally exists. And it also has some advantages when you have your own system. Like you could be a brand and you don't want to be associated with WordPress. You want to be proud that you have your own internal tools, or for security reasons or for whatever. But Kobe is going to get into that.
Yeah.
But of course, all of them have their advantages, and I wanted to make it like ring in your head that WordPress is not the only content management system. We
Yeah.
have other content management systems like October CMS. We have a lot,
Drupal, you have Drupal.
yeah, many
Yeah.
other CMSs. So
Yeah.
WordPress is not the only one. It's just so popular because of perhaps the ease of use. And at some point, if Kobe doesn't talk about it, I'll also talk about the maybe the disorder that came into the WordPress world because of just how easily people can add stuff into it and how they try to customize it to meet modern day needs.
Yeah. Okay, so also in the commercial, so WordPress, like Noel mentioned, is open source, and also there's the idea of freedom, but freedom not as in free beer, but freedom as is in the ability for you to extend. But then there is a hook, because if you remember, Noel, Google, for example, was sued by Oracle for Java. Java is open source, and then when they used it to build Android and the bulk
My
of their other
connection
systems.
is dancing.
Oh, okay, no
My
worries.
connection is dancing in here.
Yeah, no worries. Mine is the anchor, so you can always jump in and out. So Noel, I want to first of all put something out there about open source systems. It's very
Yeah,
appealing to use open source systems, but if you notice, uh, uh, there are so many lawsuits around open source systems. For example, Google built Android around Java, and then Oracle started suing Google because it's very easy for you to miss one of the,
violate the
yeah, to
clauses
violate,
of
yeah,
the
and
terms
then
and conditions.
yes, and then there are lawyers out there just waiting. So that's why now Google has Flutter, which is using their own language, which is a Dart. So one thing about these open source systems is that if you're an organization that you're building a product that you think is gonna extend over the years, especially if you want to disrupt the market, you should know what you're reusing so that you don't have lawsuits piled up against you. Let's say in Cameroon, if you have a couple of writers who want to build like a reading application or build some platform where like a marketplace. Yes, you can build it on WordPress, but you have to be very careful because one of the rules for these open source apps is that whatever changes you make, you have to also release it to the public so that others can use it the same as you use WordPress in the first place. So then it's very easy to violate things. Facebook also had some issues about that.
Yeah. That the lots of WordPress uh lawsuits, and it's a big topic in the WordPress world. WordPress licensing, like
Yeah,
there are actually open source projects that are building tools just for you to be able to study different open source licenses to make sure that to catch some clauses, because people just jump into open source projects without necessarily checking the license that guides,
yeah,
because there are liberal license, there are more conservative licenses, and
yeah,
so it's actually a very big topic as you mentioned.
yeah.
But there are some quite safe licensings, I think, like the
Yeah,
MIT,
the MIT one is saved. The GNU, I think GNU too has an update. So yeah,
Apache, and some other ones. But yeah, business wise, it's always very intelligent to make sure anytime you're using a piece of open source software like WordPress, you are really sure about the legalities around that, especially if you plan to like extend your business.
yeah. And
So
then
it's
yeah,
also in
sorry,
this
go.
case it's a cost-effective decision, but in the long run, because in the beginning it might be cheaper, but it might become way more expensive in the long run.
Yeah. Okay, so now the next thing is I'll talk a little bit about commercial content management systems and why the changes that are happening today. Then from there, I'll connect it now to maybe building from scratch again versus WordPress. So in the commercial world, there are content management systems. The big one is from Microsoft, which is called a SharePoint. I actually worked on SharePoint for almost 5 years. So SharePoint is like WordPress, but it's like if you see WordPress like a Russian Kalashnikov in terms of a gun, then SharePoint is like, what is that? It's like a bazooka or something. Like it's bigger and has more capabilities. So now the same, it comes, you can build your solutions on top of it. It's a whole platform. But then companies started realizing that you spend a lot of time paying for a license. Let's say if you have a company and each user that you add to that system, you have to pay Microsoft for, right? Now they start spending millions of dollars for the platforms that they're given. And now they also realize that instead of spending all these millions on licensing, you could spend maybe the same or less hiring your own developers and building your own system that you customize less, because maybe it costs less for you to customize a system than to build from scratch than to customize it. So a lot of companies now, that's why you have front end developers now in the United States and maybe from India making a lot of money. People using Angular, Vue.js, what else is there? There are many React and things like that.
Belts and all of those
Yes,
things.
exactly. And then there is another technique of the web development sphere changed, I think, by 2008, 2007, when Ajax erupted, especially Google Maps, where web applications are now like mobile apps. They change without you refreshing the page. So that also has caused people to not really use WordPress as it was. So now I'll talk a little bit about the architecture. So normally when you contact the website, you put the address. The web browser has to go fetch the content, right, from the server and then display it on the page. So the way traditional WordPress apps are is that once you put that link, it has to go get it and then reload the page. So you click on home, it shows the content. When you click on about us, it reloads. So then you see that it's different. It's not as reactive as a mobile application. So then each time it reloads, you have to lose all the content that you had, because it's like starting the application from scratch. So in order for it to reload like that, it has to download the assets that are unneeded. So now one thing too is, once you have this WordPress site, it has all the assets that you need, like the pictures and the data and every other thing that you need to display the page. So sometimes when you deploy a WordPress site, a vanilla WordPress site, there are all of these things that you don't actually need. You just want to show the homepage. But then you just start downloading all other pictures, all other things that are not necessarily needed. So now, with the rise of Ajax, that's asynchronous JavaScript and what's that again? XML. There's the
Yeah.
ability for you to just change only the piece of the page that you want. The same like when you're using Google Maps, as you are changing, it's zooming in and out and showing you the current location without refreshing the whole page. So you see now that you're saving a lot of bandwidth, right? So, and then now if you're building a custom application from scratch, you can make it in a way that just like how a machine does not need any extra part, or since we're here with the writer, the same way that a sentence does not need any extra words, right? The same way your application does not need any extra thing that it doesn't need. So when you do WordPress, it has all of these assets that it comes with that you perhaps don't need. So when you're building from scratch, you can put exactly what you need, which is that you're writing that sentence, you're in control. You see, and it's easier than taking out the things from WordPress that you don't need. So that's another thing that can cost you for the points I want to say your business needs may cost you to build from scratch, or you have done your analysis and you see that you spend more time customizing than building from scratch. You could as well see that you spend more time taking out unnecessary things than just writing it yourself. So that's one point.
Yeah, and just to add, from what WordPress was, as Kobe explained, it was just the app that had to reload and stuff like that. But over the years, as the web has gotten modern with Ajax, Vue.js, and all of these things, the WordPress guys have tried to move with the guys
Yeah.
by trying to incorporate some of these things. But unfortunately, their effort to incorporate some of these things have turned out to be what I would personally call a disaster, because they have to support the WordPress that everyone was using, because about more than 30% of the internet relies on WordPress.
I think is it
Thousands,
70 or
millions,
anyway, sorry, it's PHP. Go on, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
PHP and WordPress. So you have millions of websites that are running WordPress. They have to support that. And then now they have to add all of these new things. So they have to make sure those sites keep working. And then these new modern things are there. So the code base has a whole lot of stuff that we don't need that cannot be removed, and then some new things that we need, but when they put them together, it's just not as organized as a small system that you could put together, picking out very carefully exactly the things that you need, but of course at the expense of having someone who understands how to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the part of this is also about the architecture of your application, and again, like I tried to mention, it's also about your business needs. So whatever one does, it should be driven by the needs of your business. You could always do backward induction, where you start with what you want. Do you want a blog? Do you want an application which is like maybe Google, where you have users that they can contribute? You also want to do access control. Some people, if you're an admin, you can access this, change this. If you're not an admin, you can only read. If you're a member not registered, you don't see anything. So those are some of the
Um,
decisions that can drive you. Yeah, sorry.
please let me. I want to interrupt it a little bit.
Yeah,
In terms of the graphic user interface,
yeah.
which one has a higher quality? The WordPress site or the one which is built from scratch?
It depends on you, because at the end of the day, it's you, right? As a programmer, you are a writer, but you are the kind of writer who is describing processes to the computer. So the computer is a taskmaster. Have you seen this thing where the genie appears and then says, your wish is my
Yes, yes,
command?
yes, yes.
That's how the
Exactly,
computer
exactly.
is. So you write to the computer that show this, show that, when the user is not logged in, kick them out, and all of those. So now the user interface is directly proportional to the skill of those developing it and their business requirements. So it's difficult to say this one is better, because you can
Okay,
see
okay,
a site that is built by, let's say, the guy who started WordPress, I forgot his name. If you look at his site, he built it in WordPress. It's very clean and very nice. And you look at other WordPress experts, they have very beautiful sites. Now, when you come, there are people that have other applications that they also build from scratch that are equally beautiful. So it depends, but there's someone who could just take a WordPress site and maybe not change much, and then again, it's just directly proportional to the skill that is
Yeah,
put in.
because
And
I've seen some
again,
very I've seen some very poor sites.
yeah,
Very,
Yeah,
exactly.
very,
and
very,
and and there's something you must know. There are two graphical user interfaces we're talking about here. There's a graphical user interface that your users see, which with WordPress, that's what is very, very easily changeable. And then there's this graphical user face that you, the administrator, sees, which is much more difficult to customize and change.
Yeah,
So if someone was building a website for you, how good your CMS looks like visually, like the GUI, depends on how good the person is in developing UIs, like Kobe said.
yeah,
But with WordPress, you should know that okay, with WordPress we have themes that you could easily buy a beautiful theme,
yeah,
but the WordPress back end remains the same. Like
yeah,
it's much more difficult to customize the WordPress back end. But of course, a lot of people don't care because their users don't see it. Their users just see the front end
yeah,
themes. But again, themes come with their own problems. Like sometimes the people who create themes, they put trackers in it. They put some things that collect information from your site. There's just a lot of security problems that comes with having a lot of people contributing to one thing. And you also need to be an expert to mitigate that. That's why we have a lot of WordPress sites being hacked. Um, People like, anyways, that's a little bit derailing, but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
people really.
please go on, Noel. Let me speak with Isaac. Isaac is a partner on Topo. He's calling me. So you guys go on over here.
Okay,
Yo, Isaac.
so like I was saying,
Yeah, yeah.
what could happen is when you get a lot of stuff, because with WordPress they have built it and there's this framework that we add
Okay,
other
can we chat
things
about it?
on
I'm
it.
live now
We
answering
have
some questions
plugins, we have
about
these themes.
WordPress and
These
the rest. I
themes
can
are
send you
what
the link if you want to join too.
your
Although I'm
users are
closing
going
it
to be
soon.
seeing, right? And the people who make these things are independent
Topo, yeah.
developers on the internet. It could be me, it could be
Some
any other
guys were asking some
developer.
things about building
And
website.
many times you're not really sure what exactly is inside this team.
Okay.
Sometimes they put things to track. You might be using a payment plugin that diverts some of the
Okay. All
funds
right.
on your
Okay.
website
Shalom.
to another
Yeah.
place.
Right.
So plugins, themes, and all of the things that come together to make up WordPress have security issues associated with them. And so sometimes you need WordPress experts also to kind of make sure that your WordPress website is secure from all of these things, which can also, at the end of the day, raise up the cost of developing a WordPress website if you're doing something very significant. I think that at the end, when we are concluding, we are going to talk about who can use WordPress, who is safe, for example, because we might talk about a lot of things about
Yeah.
organizations and why they might choose not to use WordPress. Whereas maybe for you at this point in time, WordPress is not a very bad decision. It's
Yeah.
just what you need. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you should be able to answer that kind of
Yeah.
question.
Okay. And so let me now dive a bit. Let me be a little bit more technical. So there is also, since WordPress is a tool, right? There's so many tools in developing, starting from languages. Like we said, the computer is the taskmaster. You instruct it on what to do. So WordPress is written in a language called PHP, and that's the primary language that runs the operations on WordPress, and then it generates HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which will paint the UI for you in your browser. So now, as a developer, there's so many ways to use WordPress. I have a way of using WordPress. What I do with WordPress is it gives me, I love the back end of WordPress, but I don't like the front end of WordPress. So Noel had mentioned that there's a back end that you use to administer your content. I love that part because it's easier for me to build a UI, but then most of my clients that I have in my business of developing applications, I notice that we often get stuck at the point of getting the content that they actually want to display. So when they tell me I want a header, I want a footer, I want a side nav, I wanted this color, we always build that. And then when I ask them, okay, what do you want me to put on the homepage? Or I send an email, send me the content. That's where things start dragging. But if you can just send them a link, like the WordPress backend that they should log in and then fill in the content, then you see that it's easier that way, and you can develop, you can deploy. So I'm talking now from the point of view of running an agency. It could be easy for you to have this WordPress backend where your users just log in and update the pages themselves. So if that's the case, it means that as a developer, I can use WordPress just for that purpose. So I can now, and that's how I use WordPress, and I like to use it. I can have WordPress kept somewhere as an engine or as a warehouse that manages my content, right? And then the actual UI or GUI, graphical user interface, is built in some other thing like an Angular or some modern UI development platform. So now whenever I need content, I can just ask WordPress, because if I put it online, everything, you could look at the internet like a big city, and then each server has its address like a home address. So when I need something for my backend, I can always ask it that, okay, give me the content that should be put on the homepage. Give me the content that should be put on the About Us. So it will give me the content, and then I will write it down on the UI. So now if you think of it, you see that you can start building applications. What if my application was an oven? Like a microwave that wants to know when to start or when to not start, but those instructions are kept in a WordPress backend. So that microwave can make a request to the WordPress and say, okay, give me my schedule for today, and then the WordPress can give it to it. It could as well be some other kind of device. It could be a doorbell. It could be some security system. So when you use your phone or use the browser, that's just one application or one device that can access your application. There could be so many things. It could be some light bulb. It could be some light bulb that has a sensor that whenever somebody passes around it, it sends a count to say that, okay, 2 people have passed. It could be a security camera. And then, so you see now that you could put your WordPress as one engine somewhere that has its own address and has its own use, and then other applications can communicate with it. So Noelle, I think it's the same thing I did for AYC, where I use Blogger, right? Where the content is kept there, and whenever I need it, I just make a call. So in that case, you see that you could put your content anywhere. It could be in a Microsoft spreadsheet. It could be in Google spreadsheet. It could be even on Facebook. It could be anywhere. And then once the user is able to enter the data on your application, you can then write a process that requests for that data, gets it, consumes it, and then paints it on the UI, which could be anything: mobile phone, television. What do we have today? It could be a bus station that wants to show you the times. So that data could be coming from WordPress or any other place.
That means you can put. You said content could be from Facebook.
Yeah.
That means I could be blogging from my Facebook page and it goes
Exactly.
directly to the website.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So long as you can locate it, because it's the same thing that happens where, let's say like this video, what is happening is the video is encoded, right? As you and I are talking, the images, but the images are encoded as ones or zeros, and then they're sent either to the Zoom server, and then your own Zoom application is requesting for that data from the Zoom server. So it's taking it and then decoding it back as an image. So you can put that data on Facebook, and then you have your application that goes to the location where it's stored, gets the data, consumes it as you want. So it's the same thing. So it's just about communication. So then the computers are like humans that communicate, and then programming now will be the craft of you directing these processes that say, okay, now when this is this, get this data. If the data is correct, show the data. If it's not correct, show an error message and stuff like that. Or if it's not correct, try again. Try 5 times. After 5 times, show an error message, just like that. So as a programmer, you are only limited by how much you can imagine.
See, interesting. Very interesting.
Mashallah.
Not make a program out.
I mean, as a writer, it's very easy. That's why if you notice, most programmers can write, because again, it's composition. when you
Yeah.
are programming, you have instructions that you can give. They are like phrases, right? And then you could compile them into paragraphs, which would be like functions. And by a paragraph has like a topic sentence, right? And then a whole essay has a thesis statement. So one program or one module, or you could think of a module as a department in a company. One module could have its thesis, which says that, okay, what we do is we manage posts, or one could be we manage comments, right? And then you could have one function, which is like one paragraph, that all it does is it takes a particular ID of a comment, the way to identify the comment, that this comment is written by Atobo. It gets that and then displays it. So it will be like that paragraph that only does one thing. So now you can compose paragraphs into a chapter, compose chapters into a book, books into sections, sections into library, library into whatever. So that's how programs can scale out like that, just by you writing these instructions and grouping them until you have a whole platform like Google. Yeah. So it's about
I
writing.
see.
Yeah.
Because I was asking because I intend to build a website, get
Okay.
a writer's website for myself by
Mm-hmm.
2021.
Mashallah.
Because I was trying to see, yes, I was trying to see which is preferable,
Yeah.
go from scratch or PHP. What
Yeah.
I say PHP,
Yeah, WordPress.
WordPress.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. It's about requirements, right? When you the one of the things in programming is organization. If you're not organized, you get lost. So, but you can do backward induction. You start with the goal, and then you start working back towards how you achieve that goal. So you want the writer's website. What do you want? Is it you the only writer? You have people that will consume the information you put. Do you want other writers to register? And if they register, do you want them to access only the things that they have, or do you want them to access things that are given access to? So once you answer all those questions, the next thing will be, how do I achieve those? So you start going back, okay, I'll have a group of people called users. I'll have things that they write. I'll have things that come from the public. Where do I put those? How do I access them? So as you're answering those questions, you come until you come and actually write the code that allows you to access whatever has to be accessed. Yeah. So that's that. It's a whole process. It's an art of composition, and is very beautiful. To me, it's an art. It's because it you can do it anyhow. It's about how you think, of which you can do it the way others think. You can be inspired. It could be like poetry where you have your stanzas or whatever, but it's also driven by inspiration. And it's something that as you get deeper and deeper, it starts exposing you to other aspects like spirituality and things like that. Because when I program, for example, I see my I don't mean it in a kind of a rude way. They are almost like a god, because you are like telling, you're creating a world where things happen according to how you want it. You see, so you're the same like when you're writing like fantasy. You're creating a whole world. Like the
That's
guy who
so
created
because
Game of Thrones.
the characters are limited only
Exactly.
by the limit of your imagination.
Exactly. So the same, and the reason why the characters are limited by imagination is because they're idealized components. If you're building a bridge, or you're building some kind of plane or physical thing, you are limited by the laws of nature. You can build a speaker, but you cannot amplify the sound so great, because you can only do so far, and also because the laws of thermodynamics, gravity, and all of those things that affect the speaker, where it stands, and how the sound can propagate it, will be the things to limit you. But when you are in the application and you're building it, you're only limited by your ideals. How, if you are defining a user has a username, a password, date of birth. Those are idealized components, right? When you're thinking, you could visualize it as a physical entity that you plug into the system, but in the real sense, it's a component that is abstract. It only exists in the form of text. But then it means that as a programmer, you are like a carpenter, or you are like a bricklayer, but the bricks that you make are made of text. So you're just like instructing the computer on what to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Very, very
if no further questions, I think we can round up. We can continue this some other day. I think the content that we've put here, we can consume it and then reconvene another time if there's no other thing for us to talk
Yeah.
about here.
Kobe, one thing you have not talked about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You have talked a lot about WordPress.
Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit about non WordPress stuff, building your own stuff from scratch, and then
Okay.
I think
Okay.
we can.
Yeah. So, like I said, building your own stuff from scratch is it's an art of composition. So it's about determining the requirements, like what is it that you want to build, and then how do you organize them. So now, although we call the word scratch from scratch, but it's not. You must not build it from scratch. There are things called design patterns that have been there before
Template.
us. Well, not templating is just one design pattern. So design patterns are techniques or recipes for organizing your content. The same like as a writer, if you study the works of Aristotle, and be it from rhetoric or from writing, you have things like comedy. Comedy is a pattern, right? Tragedy is a pattern. A comedy will end well. A tragedy will not end well, right? So, so you see that it gives you like a template, but that template is just one way of seeing it. You see, so now, and even like songs, you have a chorus and then you have verse one, you have a chorus, verse two. So when you're writing songs, you don't start it from scratch. You follow those techniques, right? So now in programming, the same thing. They call them design patterns. If you are building a house, you know that you need windows. You know that you need a drainage system. Those are already patterns that are there. So even if you're building a house from scratch, you are not reinventing those things. So now, when you're dealing with applications, there are three main things. You want data. You want to be able to display that. The data is the one thing. To display the data is another thing, and then when to display what is another thing. So you see that there are three main aspects that are involved. So now those have been distributed into three main sectors. One is called the model, which is for the data. One is called the controller, which is like a traffic cop that says this data coming from here, go here. And then one is called the view, which is actually showing that. And WordPress also incorporates and incarnates that. It's an incarnation of that pattern. You see, so building from scratch too is as easy as knowing that this is where I'll keep my data. This is where I will show my data, and this is how I will show the data at a given time. You see?
And I want to ask something.
Yeah.
When you build from scratch, because I remember when I was there's this place, there's this IT firm by me that where I spent some time there about close to a year. I realized something. There's this content management system that is when they build from scratch. It's a content management system
Yeah.
that the customer is given access to.
Yeah.
Then there was, because I used to prepare some of these things that they give to clients. There's something they call website management.
Yeah.
With website management fee, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay website management fee.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
Management of a of a website which is built from scratch or WordPress, can it only be done by a programmer, or the user can manage his own website by himself? The person who has paid for the website.
Yeah. Right. So again, that's a business decision in the sense that you, as a programmer, since you direct everything, you can decide that okay, the management of the site will be absorbed by me or will be absorbed by the client. But the actual management of the site is a process. You see what I mean? It's a process where the user has to go to that interface where they manage it and do the actual management. So you as a programmer, you can program that. I don't know if you see how recursive it is. So you can program that if you don't have a tool that does it already. But since WordPress is a tool to assist you, it comes with that, with the interface for you to manage the actual content of the site. Like management is about creating, reading, updating, and deleting, right? So now WordPress gives you through that back end the access for the admin to go in there and edit it. So if you are building from scratch, you can as well also capture that process of managing the content and either creating a solution around it, or the process could be that, okay, whenever you want to update this page, send me the content, email me or call me and tell me, and then I will go and update it. And Noelle had mentioned this at the start. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your
That means
question. Yeah.
that means that these people they're
Yeah.
intentionally keeping it for themselves so that the customers will pay money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why I
yeah,
say it's a
yeah. It's
business
wonderful.
decision. Yeah, that's
They
why I
do
say it's a
that.
business
They do
decision.
that. You know, they do that. they do that. You know, the management of the website, there are actually two levels. There is the management where you have to edit the content, update stuff, and then there's the management where maybe if you are not using WordPress, you have your own site
Yeah.
that you're running, maybe the hosting and those kind of things. Those are two different levels of management.
Yeah.
But like what you said, people, some companies build their own content management system, which gives you some ability to edit sites, and then they keep that as a proprietary tool. And then now whenever a customer wants a website, they just take some HTML and CSS, or they just build a theme
Yeah.
and connect it to their own CMS,
Yeah.
and then they give the client.
Yeah.
So now for the maintenance of their own CMS and their own running, which is their own business, they now charge the client for a maintenance fee, which is something like what WordPress.com itself does.
Yeah.
WordPress.com has taken the WordPress side, which is free, and now they are helping you to create websites, and they are managing the data for you, like not the data in the sense that they put in the content for you, like where it's stored, making sure that the data is never lost, like backing it up, making sure that your site is always up and available. They do all of that for you. That's another level of management. That's technical management, and then you could pay maybe $5 a month.
Yeah.
You see, yeah. So there are all of these options.
Yeah.
But since we are about rounding up, I think that for a start,
Yeah.
most individuals, if you have the right counseling, it's fine to start with WordPress as an individual and a small entity for something like a blog. I'm very specific, for something like a blog, not just any application. If you're starting like a blog where you want to put out content for people to read, it's okay to start off with WordPress. But if you think that your blog could become something like Medium, where you want other people to contribute, you want people to pay subscription fees, then you are not just wanting to put out content for yourself. You're trying to build a platform. And then in that case, WordPress becomes a less attractive solution. So that's kind of how you can look at it. It really depends on what you want to use it for, like your business needs, as Kobe said. But generally, because a lot of people will say, yeah, you guys have said all this right now. Maybe I am a small journalist, or I am this. I want to start my site. Which one should I use? If you
Yeah.
are starting a small blog and security is not a lot of problem for you, your content is something that maybe you have it on some drives or some doc. If you lose it, you can easily have it back. You don't have some money that if they hack into your site, you're going to lose, those kind of things. For a start, WordPress is not a bad decision. If you just also want to put out content to the world, right? You could get a WordPress expert that could give you a really good site with some fairly good security. But if you want to build something like Medium or some other publication site that has a different ideology about publication, or yeah, WordPress might not be the best decision at the moment. So I think that's what you can get like a takeaway.
Yeah. And
Okay, that
yeah.
means say
Yeah.
WordPress way I will use.
Yeah, and the core of computer science, let me just say, is it's
I mean,
it's analysis, right? It's about taking
Okay.
some need and then running it against your expectations and what drives your expectations, and then concluding. You see, so now WordPress is very good if you have clients, or you want some application that, especially for blogging. And what do I mean by that? You want to add content, but you also want to categorize that content either based on time. Like you want to capture everything that you put on a particular day, on a particular month, and particular year. So WordPress already has an engine that runs things like that. So now that engine part is about taking that content and managing it that way. So now when it comes to displaying that content, if you don't have a lot of proprietary ways of displaying it, like maybe the interactions that you want are not novel, and you look at WordPress, it gives you what it is that you want, then there's no need doing what is already there. You see, so once you run that analysis and you see that you don't need it, you don't need the extra work, so you just use WordPress as it is. So now if you're an entrepreneur starting a web development shop, you with WordPress, you see that you can spin off, you can handle like 10 clients a week. especially if they know exactly what they want, because you can just get a theme, either you buy it, or if you have a developer that does that, they develop the theme, you install it, send the site to the client, the back end, ask them to put their data. When they put it, you guys validate it and launch it live. You see, so that way you can start spinning off clients sites like very fast. You see, and then if now you start dealing with very complex things, like let's say Google Maps does not exist, and then you want to build it, like building that on WordPress would be like what will I say, it's like trying to fly a car. You see what I mean? So you have to yeah, so you have to like do something else. Yeah, so that's
You're
that.
trying to fly a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So without
I
much
hope
yeah.
yeah, I hope that this girl will be able to follow.
Yeah.
Anyways, this video will be available on the page.
Yes, it will be available. Yeah.
Dr. Ngwashi Christabel, because she was asking for I tapped her under the post that I made,
Yeah.
because she said that she has asked several times and she has received different responses from people
Yeah.
regarding the difference between WordPress site and building from scratch.
Okay.
Yes, but now that I've heard, I think that from what Noelle said,
Mm-hmm.
if you just want to start something,
Yeah.
because basically the writer site,
Yeah.
for the ones that I've seen that they
Yeah.
sell writing services there, they mostly they have a section where they update content. They
Mm-hmm.
have a section where they update content.
Yeah.
They have a section where you I mean, let me just say, they have a section, a blog where they
Yeah.
write,
Yeah.
writing related stuff. Maybe they give tips on
Yeah.
how to improve your writing ability. They have a section where they have their CV,
Mm-hmm.
they have their contacts. Yeah, because he's saying I'm trying to pitch some sites that
Yeah.
I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
There is not the information that is there is not very complex.
Yeah.
It's just basic things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a place where you can contact. Yes, you have a place where you can contact. You have a blog. You have a quote. You have a CV.
Yeah.
You have what again? Past works,
Yeah.
where you have the display.
Yeah.
Yeah, they display what they have done before and the things that are written on other sites.
Yeah.
Something like that. So I
That's
think
simple. WordPress can do
based
that.
on what you guys have, yes,
Yeah.
based on what you guys have discussed, I think that yeah, WordPress WordPress is going to be a good option for a start.
Yeah. Mashallah. Yeah. Well, thanks very much. You can consider this a first session or the first discussion on this topic. We could have more
Yes.
discussions where we even do hands-on, like maybe try some things out and do benchmarks. Like in the computer field, we don't just talk on air. We like to be practical, because it's not like you need a lab, so you don't have to travel
Yeah,
to your own day to a
yeah,
lab to test an idea. You can just do it there. So we can have another
that,
session where we actually get our hands dirty and see what comes up.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you guys very much. We can continue some other time. Thanks for your time.
Yeah,
Thanks for listening to
we're
all the
supposed to
viewers.
discuss Anglophone
Yeah,
crisis.
yeah,
That
we
one
can
be
do that some
scheduled.
other time. Yeah, yeah,
To be scheduled.
yeah. All right, guys.
Okay,
Thank
okay,
you.
okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
Have a good one.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye.